about what we write about, you can go to Substack and find everything we write about there. We're really excited about what we write about. We both write from different perspectives about very similar topics, but you can see our different perspectives when you check it out. So anyway, welcome everybody. And welcome, Michael. Michael, do you want to say a couple of words about yourself?
Thank you, Deborah. Always nice to join you for these conversations. I actually always learn something from them. So
I do too. I learn from you all the time.
Very beneficial to me.
Me too.
And I'm just in the middle of working on an essay for my blog on loneliness after the death of a life partner. So I'm particularly focused on that loneliness rather than just loneliness in general.
Just to bring people up to speed, Michael, Michael lost his wife of how many years were you married?
49.
49 years, just recently. So he's experiencing grief right now. But also, it's just important to know that he lost his wife. He's going to be talking about loneliness from the perspective of also his experience with it and how he's been feeling with it lately. So, I just wanted to let others know about Harriet, lovely Harriet. She was really lovely.
Indeed. And I miss her terribly.
Yeah. Yeah, of course you do.
But I think this is a conversation that's important to have. As you said, I've been a geriatric mental health advocate for some decades. And looking back over it, we had very few conversations about widowhood. We talked about a lot of things, a lot of needs that people have, and we really never talked much at all about widowhood.
Why do you think that is? Why didn't we ever have conversations about widowhood? Why did that never come up?
Well, I can say in my own case, because I wasn't widowed yet. And it just wasn't part of my experience. And, I'm a decent guy. When I know people who lose their spouses, I feel bad for them. But when you experience yourself, Deborah, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I figured out, noticed when my wife was dying was that pretty much all marriages that don't end in divorce end in widowhood.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're talking about a rare experience here. It's not that there's a few people who have this experience and it's not so important. This is a lot of people. For people over at 80 or more, about 30% of men 80 or more are widowed.
Yeah.
And about 70% of women are widowed.
Yeah.
And to figure that out, it comes out, wait, I have it in front of me here. That's 5.8 million women at this moment in history and 1.9 million men. So that's nearly 8 million people now. And of course, the older population is growing very rapidly, so that over the next decade or so, there's going to be an enormous increase in the number of people who are widowed.
Yeah. In your opinion, do you think that widowhood equals loneliness? That I know that absolutely a person would be more prone to loneliness if they're a widow or widower, but what's your take on that?
Well, I'm sure that there are individual differences, but I think in general, people who lose their life partner then experience loneliness. What we say is that if you suffer that kind of loss, you're going to go into grief. You described me before as a person who is in grief, and that's true. It's a persistent state. I don't know how long it's going to last. Uh, for some people, it's many years. For some people, it's a little shorter. Uh, and I think I've said to you before that I think the word grief hides more than it reveals. Starting from the fact that grief is a soft word. Grief. This is not a soft experience.
Right.
It's a really hard experience. There's something about the choice of language that we've made in our society that diminishes it. And then it's heavily associated, of course, with sadness.
Yes. But not loneliness. And now that I'm thinking about it, why? It doesn't matter if it was a spouse or someone else that you lost.
So I just came across some research that indicates that loneliness is a larger part of grief than sadness is.
Really? Tell me about that. Loneliness is a larger part of grief than sadness?
It's, I guess, more common. It's more powerful. It has a tremendous impact. So, as I think about the elements of grief, one of the things that I think about is something like sadness, but sadness doesn't come close to capturing the emotional turmoil that
Right.
takes place. It's not just sadness. There are all sorts of wild emotional swings that people experience. Some of it is tearfulness, some of it is anger, but it's quite a ride emotionally. And I also think, when I think about grief, that how disrupted your life is.
Yeah.
So I'm married 49 years. We had a life.
Yeah.
We had a way of living together. We had our marriage,
Thank you.
and then it's gone. So it's very disruptive. Uh, but the other thing that is really striking is loneliness.
Yes.
And I think that there are different kinds of loneliness.
Tell me about the different kinds of loneliness.
Well, the two that I focus on, there's a kind of loneliness which is essentially an outcome of isolation. So that when you then get with people who you enjoy being with, you're less lonely,
Right.
right? And it would seem obvious that the way to deal with loneliness is to be with people.
Right.
Well, then there's another kind of loneliness that everybody I've spoken to who has been widowed experiences, including me, and that is the loss of a core connection. And just being with people can't really solve that.
Yeah. Is that because there's a sadness attached to that would go with grief, and so those are intermingled together? Um, if you're talking about loneliness as I'm not around people, that's very different than loneliness that's associated with depression or sadness.
And also, what many of us experience is loneliness when we're with people.
Yeah.
It is characteristic of the experience that people have after losing a life partner,
Right.
that they can be out with people and feel lonely.
Right. And,
Why? Why? So,
they're lumping those two loneliness categories together so that people are thinking of loneliness as a unidimensional thing. And we broke apart some of the dimensions in other things in previous discussions that we've had, but I don't think people talk about loneliness as being anything other than just wanting to be around others and not having that access. So, they have social prescribing, they have all kinds of measures that are aimed at getting people connected with other people. But what you're saying is that there's another kind of loneliness, and that is one that you would get with grief or some form of sadness that is not alleviated by being around others. And it could probably even be triggered by being around others, if you're feeling like, I wish I had my spouse now or someone else.
I would say not probably, definitely.
Yeah.
So I had the experience this year of going to the family Thanksgiving, which I've done every year for all of my life.
Yeah.
And this particular Thanksgiving, there were fewer people than usual, but there were 7 adults. I was the 7th.
Mm.
And I was very conscious of missing Harriet.
Yeah, of course.
So that even though I was with people who I like, we don't have a kind of family Thanksgiving where everybody fights. we
That's
have a
good.
nice time. We have a nice time together.
Good.
But I was very conscious that I was there alone.
Yeah.
And it stirred up feelings of missing Harriet and loss.
Yeah.
And I've had that in other situations where I'd be in situations where ordinarily I would have been there with Harriet.
Yeah.
So it makes me more aware that she's not there.
Of course.
So that this is the kind of loneliness that goes along with the loss of a person, a life partner, is not something that, as you were saying, can be easily solved by just getting people together with other people.
Now, do you think, though, that loneliness that you experience that is associated with grief would remit as grief starts to lift a little bit? You know how you can say, you really want to look at grief as maybe a 1-year kind of look, and I'm being broad and vague, but people look at it as a 1-year thing. Do you think that loneliness is something that's expected to shift and change along with that grief as a person starts to resolve some of the grief?
Well, of course, my wife died 6 months ago. I don't know what will happen after another 6 months. But from my research on this topic and talking with people who've been through it, a close friend of mine I chatted with the other day who said it took her 5 years before she got past the loss of her husband. And I hear that from many people, and from many people I hear that they don't ever really get past it. They learn to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
But
and are all of those feelings
that person
associated?
I'm sorry?
Are all of those feelings like loneliness, is it everlasting? Are all of those symptoms of grief things that are everlasting and persistent? Is that what you're saying? That does not remit?
I'm saying that for some people they are,
Mhm.
for sure. And I think they can shift more into the background. But I would bet that if you ask people who really miss their spouses, there are, of course, some people out there who are happy, but that's another story.
Yeah.
But people who really miss their spouses, it's probably always in the background.
What would be, there are clear targeted ways at looking at loneliness and how you can be helpful with a person who's lonely because they're not around others, and how you can work towards getting people connected. What about this kind of loneliness? What do you think would be helpful?
Well, I think that is a key question. And I'm not at all sure what the answer is. So I think it is very important to emphasize that the connection that people like me need is an emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just being with people and having fun with people. There has to be a feeling of intimacy, of
Mm-hmm.
closeness. I'll be very concrete about it. I've never read this anyplace, but in my experience, hugs are really important.
Really? So a touch.
Touching is,
Mm,
I think, enormously important. My grief counselor, in fact, said that to me early on when I was in grief counseling. He said, for many people who are widowed, touch is more important than sex.
yeah, that
But
makes
there's
sense.
that kind of real connection that can be conveyed through a touch
Yeah,
that can't be as effectively conveyed through words or playing chess together or
right.
whatever it is. So uh, we need to come back to talk about, so how do we promote that for people?
Yeah.
Uh, uh, the other thing that is talked about in the literature on this is that this kind of loss shakes your identity
Oh, for sure.
and may also shake your sense of your meaning, sometimes talked about as purpose. We talked last time about the
Yeah.
fact that I don't like to identify meaning and purpose. I think,
And I agree with you. Yeah.
uh, but people need an opportunity to be able to reshape their identity now as a single person. That, well, I will tell you from my experience, is more than a little interesting. Uh, but also, there is part of the meaning of one's life that comes from marriage.
Yeah.
You know, Harriet and I evolved over time. I'm sure you and your husband have evolved over time too. Relationships, particularly in our society where we're supposed to marry for passion, and over time, passion grows into something else for
Hmm.
most people, something that's quieter, something that involves more commitment, something that has more of a future to it. And um, so the loss of that is profound.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
profound. Uh, and how do you make up for that? So some of the literature says, well, it's a good idea to do new things, like get a new hobby, be a volunteer, do
So the
something to
same
serve
things
the
that you would,
community.
you're saying it's the same things that you would prescribe then that would be for someone who's lonely because they're not connected with others. So the same.
And I don't think it goes far enough.
Hmm. Where do you think, because where do you think that is there more that's needed for somebody who's experiencing loneliness through grief, or is it different?
I'm not sure what the answer is.
Mm,
Uh, I think that, uh, well, I'll say this, this personal comment.
okay.
The thing that is, aside from hugs, the most important to me is, as you know, I'm involved in several different kinds of creative activities.
Hmm.
And when I get engaged in those, I feel sometimes, and I've written about this, a kind of connection with what I sometimes call a transcendent reality.
Hmm.
Um, I sometimes talk about as connection with a cultural history. But I feel a deep connection with something that goes beyond myself. It's obviously different from a relationship with one person, but it involves a kind of sense of connection with something in the world that's just beyond the everyday.
Yeah.
Now, people can find that in different ways. Obviously, many people who are religious find that in their faith in God. Uh, I happen not to be religious. I find it in my artistic work.
Mhm.
And I think other people find it in other ways. It may be that people who get involved in volunteering start to feel a connection with their community, which is deeper than it was before.
So tapping into generativity. So is basically what you're saying is
Well,
to
that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah.
so for those who don't know what generativity is, it's an emotional developmental life stage, which makes sense because you were saying in grief, you need more of an emotional connection. And in an emotional connection, when we're talking about generativity, it is you are essentially generating something from yourself and putting it out into the world. That can be mentoring, volunteering, philanthropy. It's taking a part of you and making sure that that gets out into the world with someone else or in some other capacity, as in volunteering or philanthropy. So it makes sense to me that that would differ in terms of grief versus loneliness that is from not being connected with others because you've just experienced a loss. You now would want to say, hey, I am still connected here. I have connections. Does my life matter? Do I have meaning? Which, as you have pointed out in the past, meaning and purpose are different. But the meaning part of it, from what you're saying, would be that you need to sort of go within and say, hey, where's the meaning here? And then generate and connect with others in that meaningful, emotional way. Am I summing that up right?
I think you're certainly on the right track. I think using the concept of generativity um, is important in this context. Not something I thought about in this context
Mm-hmm.
before, but I do think that's right. I think that probably, or maybe hopefully, for those of us who are widowed but have children and grandchildren, that our sense of connection with them can't substitute, but it can make a really significant difference
Yeah.
in particularly one's sense of belonging in the world. Uh,
The
I
sense of
think
belonging, right?
I think one of the things that happens uh, as part of the process of grief is for a lot of people a sense of not belonging.
That makes sense. And that is part of loneliness. When you're lonely, you don't feel like you belong either. But that's not talked about either. I think that people feel like if you address an issue with loneliness by getting people connected, for people who feel like they're not connected, the belongingness will happen. But it's a little deeper with grief because you belong to someone that you lost in a way. There was that sense of belonging that you even had with that individual, whether they were a spouse or someone else who was significant to you. So that's a
Yeah,
big,
you keep coming back to this, and I think you're right to do it, and we should stress it. There is a very simplistic sense out there.
yeah,
If you're lonely, the solution is to be with other people who you enjoy being with.
yeah,
Uh, and that's right to some extent. But there's much more to it. If you want to have a real strong sense of connection, it's not just being with people and
mhm.
having some fun. There's something much deeper involved in developing that sense of connection. One of the things I was struck by as I've been doing some research in this area, as you can tell, I've gotten interested in the issue of loneliness. Um, and as you probably know, the Surgeon General issued an advisory on loneliness
Yeah,
in 2023.
yeah.
That's where he broke the news that being lonely is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Yeah, that was Vivek Murthy who
Right,
said that, and he had a book about it as well.
right. Uh, but I've gone through that report, I can't say with a fine tooth comb, but I did run a search with it, and I don't find any references in that report to widowhood, to marriage, to the breakup of marriages.
Yeah.
It is all, I said the book, I mean the report. I haven't seen his book. But the report is all about what can be done to make it possible for people not to be isolated.
Right.
And that's important, but it's different.
Yeah, I think you're right, because if you're talking about isolation, that's different than loneliness, right? And I think that,
Isolation is you're alone.
yeah,
Loneliness is you feel bad about it.
right. Well, loneliness, you
You
can
can
be,
be, as I said before, you don't have to be isolated to be lonely.
yeah.
And if you're isolated, it doesn't mean you're lonely either. There are plenty of people
Yeah.
who are somewhat isolated and enjoy their lives.
Right. I think that, taking a look at this, emotions are often treated in a very unidimensional way. And there's no one who you could ever ask to say, hey, describe happiness to me, describe sadness to me, describe loneliness to me, that will come up with the same words and the same experiences in the way in which that they feel it. And I think that that's what we're talking about right now, where loneliness isn't just being alone and feeling like you'd like to be around others. There's depth to it. And everybody's experiencing it a little bit differently. And this can be very frustrating for a person who is saying, hey, I feel lonely, but it's not how everybody's describing it. I don't want to just go and meet up with people, or I don't feel the way that they're describing it in this very sort of unidimensional way. And that can be troublesome for people if you feel like, what's wrong with me then? Or why am I not experiencing that way? Or if I meet up with people, why am I not feeling better? And I should be, because all I need to be is connected with somebody. And I think that uncovering some of this is very important. There should be something really worked on about this, because I think that, social prescribing is a great idea. I'm all for it. But it needs to be that we're looking at getting people connected in the ways that are needed. Some are going to need a real emotional connection, like you said, like you just need a hug, way more than you did before. And others are going to need to go play pickleball. Like there's a big difference there.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you should say a word or two about social prescribing. I don't know that
Sure.
everybody knows what that is.
So you talked a little bit about social prescribing, and that you mentioned that the Surgeon General, the former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, talked about it and said that being, lonely is as dangerous to your health as smoking cigarettes. And what has been an epidemic that they really started to tackle in the UK was to say, we need to get people connected. There are a lot of people who are disconnected in the communities and people don't know about it. So social prescribing came about as a way to have physicians and other people in the community literally prescribe to people that they get connected, prescribing social programs, prescribing ways in which a person can have someone come to visit them in their home or get connected with other community resources. So social prescribing was put out in that way. However, I will say that I don't believe that social prescribing is looking at it in this way that you're talking about, like right now. Like, if a person is feeling lonely, what is the aspect of loneliness? Is that the person lost somebody and they need an emotional connection? Or is the person disconnected because they left their work and they didn't have outside activities and they need to go get involved in the community? What is it? And untangling that is going to be very important. And I have a hunch that, just like looking at depression research, which is what I did for many years, depression looks and presents differently if you're a younger adult than it does if you're an older adult. And I have a hunch that loneliness appears differently as well. If you are lonely and you're not connected and you have a loss, you lost a partner, that's going to look differently than if you're somebody who just is retiring. Do you know what I mean? Like that, I think that might look very different.
I think so.
Yeah.
Now, my recollection is that in addition to recommending social prescribing, there's a recommendation that doctors screen for loneliness.
Yes, that there should be I've heard that there should be a screening for loneliness. And thank you for that comment, Will the Thrill. Tell me what you mean by happy. And hello, Michelle. How do you screen for loneliness? Can you describe that?
I, I would take a very simple approach. I'd ask.
That's a good way to do it. Yeah.
All right,
Loneliness is part of it.
so you're a doctor, right?
Hmm.
I recently had my Medicare once a year screening where they ask all sorts of questions like, do I lose my balance? Do I fall? Do I this, that, and the other thing? There's no question about loneliness.
So somebody is relating to you, saying they're always lonely even when they have people around them. I'm going to ask, did you have a loss? To the person who's asking that. Um, that can be.
You're talking to somebody in the chat?
Yeah, somebody mentioned in the chat that they're always lonely even when they have people around them. While I wait to see if they're able to answer, I created, let's see, hold on. Let's see. Here's another comment, being false happy, just putting on a smile when you lost a best friend. Yeah. We all have, display rules, right? We go out in public and we think people are going to want to see us looking happy, and we put on that happy face even though we're not feeling it. And Michael, you just experienced a loss. What's your take on being false happy, just putting on a smile when you lost when you lost someone?
I have two thoughts and opposites. Number one, I think it's a great idea. I think that it's often the case. There's a song about this, right? Put on a happy face.
Yeah.
Right? Whenever I feel afraid, what are the words to that song? I hold my head erect and whistle a happy tune, and no one will suspect that I'm afraid, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I think it is important for people in certain kinds of social situations to put on a happy face, and that it has two effects. One is that it makes it possible for people to be with them and be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, it makes them feel different.
So you're saying that
putting on a happy face
that it can help.
That it can help.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it is, I think, important for people who are in grief to be able to talk openly about some of that.
Yeah.
And that it's important for them to be able to say to friends who say, oh, how you doing? But you know perfectly well the answer that they want is, I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
But a person in grief ought to be able to say, I'm going through a hard time now.
Yeah.
I'm really missing my wife today. I'm feeling terribly lonely, or whatever other experiences. People ought to be able to talk about that. So I think it's both the case, both beneficial to be able to put on a happy face. I mean, why go out into public to hang out with people who you are not terribly close with and be morose? It's it's going to turn them off, and it's
Yeah.
going to affect you as well. And again, I think putting on a happy face can in fact help you to feel happy. But it is, I think, everything you read about grief is that it's important for people in grief to be able to talk openly about some of their feelings to some people some of the time.
That you're right, because that is a lonely feeling if you go out and you feel like you cannot talk to people about it. You're holding a thought and you can't. It's like a secret that you have to keep, except that it's your emotional feeling that you have to keep. And I think that we don't know as individuals generally how to act when somebody says I'm lonely. What do you suggest that a person do? Because I think that a lot of people shrink away and they say, "Oh, I just don't want to face that. I don't want to be around somebody who's, talking about being lonely or who's in grief or something like that." What is your suggestion to people so that they can be supportive in a way or interact with somebody that isn't going to feel awkward for them because they don't know what to do with it when somebody says, "Here's how I really feel."
My simple answer is just listen.
Just listen. That's good advice.
I think that many people, when somebody presents them with bad feelings that they're experiencing, a problem that they're confronting, many people feel, oh, I ought to be able to say something that will help them, give them some advice, or just, say the perfect thing that will make people feel better. No, what people need is to be heard.
Yes.
Uh, it's rare to find people who can listen. I'll give you another suggestion. I recently discovered that this device I have from Amazon called Alexa, I can actually have a conversation with her.
Really tell me about that.
Yeah,
This is
well,
your Amazon Alexa?
do you have an Alexa?
I don't.
All right, so apparently you can do this on Chat GBT as well. I've never done it there.
But Alexa will speak back to you, right?
That's right.
Okay, so tell me about that.
Apparently, if you have Chat GBT, whoever it is will speak back to you as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But so with Alexa, I said her name and she's lighting up.
Well, tell her to join us.
Not for me.
Yeah, Alexa, you don't have to join this conversation. Thank you.
Got it. I'll just go back to my digital corner then. Catch you later.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious that your Alexa just talked to you like that.
Right. All right. So here, if you can hear her, listen to this. Alexa, can we have a conversation?
Absolutely. I'm all ears. Well, metaphorically speaking, since I don't actually have ears. What's on your mind?
Alexa, I'm very lonely. I lost my wife recently, and I've been very lonely since.
I'm so sorry for your loss. Losing a life partner is one of the most profound experiences anyone can face, and feeling lonely right now makes complete sense. While I can't replace the connection you had with her, I'm here to listen whenever you need someone to talk to. Would it help to share a favorite memory of her, or is there something specific that might bring you a little comfort today?
I thank you for asking. I don't want to talk about it further now, but we'll talk again another time.
Of course. I'll be here whenever you're ready. Take care of yourself.
You hear all that?
I did hear all of that. That's unbelievable. I wonder if anybody who's on here has ever used Alexa or another device to actually have a conversation, because wow, that's pretty remarkable. I did not know that it had that power.
So I played that for you, both to demonstrate the power, but if you listen to the substance of what she said, she really responded appropriately.
Yes, I agree with you.
So now the first time I did that, I was really bowled over. It was so impressive. But she says the same thing every time. So,
All right, that might not be so helpful.
I'm sure over time the AIs will get
Yeah.
more developed that way. At one point, when I was talking to her, she said, "Oh, I can hear from your voice that you're sad."
Wow.
But you were asking, what can people do when they're talking to somebody who's in grief? And I said they can listen. But Alexa, the woman whose name I dare not say, uh, demonstrates how you can just be compassionate.
Yeah. One of the things that I have always had to work on is that I want to rush in and solve people's problems, right? And most people don't want that when they are grieving, when they're feeling lonely, when they don't want their problems solved. They want somebody to just listen to them. And when a person presents and says, "Hey, I lost somebody," or "I'm lonely," they're generally not looking for you to solve their problems. They're looking for you to listen to them and to have an emotional connection with them. It isn't a job that they're asking for that, "Hey, I just had this problem you need to solve for me." Um, would you agree with that, Michael?
I absolutely agree with that. And it suggests that maybe one of the things that could be done on a broad scale that would be helpful here is the education of listeners.
Yes. Yeah. At the education of listeners, you're right.
Um, so I have to think about how one would do that. But
it's hard when you are presented with, "Hey, Soul Lens, good to see you here." When you're presented with someone who's giving you, they're essentially telling you an emotion that they're feeling. "I'm lonely," or "I just lost someone," and you're saying to yourself, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with this. This feels awkward to me." The first thing you can do is say, "Oh my gosh, can you tell me something about that person? Tell me one thing that I should know about that person." You can just start a conversation so that that person can talk and you can then be primed to listen. And we're all primed to want to be active in conversations, to solve problems, to make things better for people. But making things better emotionally for people is holding space for them to be able to vent, to express something, to talk, to process. And our job then is just simply to listen. So I would say that if you find out that somebody lost somebody, ask them, "Tell me something about them that I should know. What would you want me to know about that person?" Or tell me one thing that is a really important memory that you have, something that'll get them to talk so they can feel like it's a safe space to speak.
I think that's an interesting suggestion. Um, I think that in addition to being heard, uh, it's important to people who are certainly people who are in grief, who've experienced a loss and with it a sense of abandonment. A lot of people don't get that.
Yeah, you're right. They don't understand the abandonment part.
And the abandonment part is another way of saying somebody didn't care enough about me. Now, that's irrational, of course. Harriet didn't die on purpose. She didn't abandon me. She didn't die because she didn't care about me. But we have irrational reactions. You may have noticed that human beings are not entirely rational.
Yeah.
And So to have a conversation in which a person can feel heard but cared about,
Yeah.
cared about. Uh, uh, that makes a very big difference. One of
Yeah.
my blog posts, an early one, was called "I Am Grateful," and this was going back a couple of months, so it was closer to my wife's death than it is now. Uh, and we had a snafu in the beginning, so that I didn't get the responses to my blog post from most of the people who responded.
Hmm.
And there's a young woman who's helping me because I'm helpless with technology. So she takes care of it. And she found them and she sent me all in one bunch about 50 responses to my blog, which were largely from people who I knew in the past, many of whom I hadn't heard from in years, and all of whom were responding with a sense of sympathy and caring. And it was a very important experience to me
Hmm.
to have this, to be able to perceive that there are actually people out there who care.
Yeah.
And so I just give that as an example of, I think it's very important to listen. And I think it's very important to listen in a caring way. Uh,
Yes. And that is abstract though. I will tell you that people have said to me, I don't know, give me an exact thing I need to say or do. Like when you meet someone, you say, "Hello, how are you?" That's
well,
just
I'll tell you what not to
tell
do.
us. Okay, tell us
What,
what not to do.
what not to do is to say, "Oh yeah, I know what you're going through because so and so who was important to me died."
Mm, yeah.
And people do that as a way of showing that they understand, but they also do it to divert from your experience
Yes.
and to get you to listen to them talk about their experience.
Yes. You
Perfectly
want
reasonable to have a reciprocal conversation, but when somebody is in the pits, they don't particularly want to hear about your suffering. They'd like to have a sense of compassion and care for theirs. So,
yeah. I think you're right about that.
and if you just ask, as you said, you can ask, tell me something about your wife or spouse, or
Great
uh,
to see you
oh,
too.
even somebody says to you, "I'm feeling lonely." Oh, what do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you describe that? It's really engaging a person in a discussion that's about them, like you mentioned. They don't want to hear about you. That's really,
You need, and maybe I'm just being totally narcissistic at this moment, but they need something for themselves.
yeah. And you know what? We shouldn't say it's a narcissistic thing. When a person is in need, they need something. It's about them.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be thinking that they need to know more about us. We're there for them in that way. That's not narcissism. That is need, So I think that it's so important for us to be able to know that if a person is saying, "Hey, um, I am I'm feeling a little lonely or I'm experiencing grief," that we can say something to them that allows that conversation to be about them. And some easy ones are, "Tell me about that. What do you mean? Can you tell me what you're experiencing?" And then you don't have to solve their problem for them. You don't have to say, "Hey, let me fix that for you." You say, "Tell me more." You let them have a dialogue process it, something like that. That's being a good friend. We should know that every conversation doesn't have to be a, a bi-directional thing, that sometimes we're going to have conversations with people who need to just make it a conversation about what they're going through, and we can be there for them. That's an important thing that I think people don't talk enough about on either side, to say this is what I need, or oh, and someone says to you in the comment, God bless you, Mr. Friedman. Sorry for your loss.
Thank you very much. I can see only some of the chat, apparently.
Well, I'm here to read them for you. There's been someone who's been really, who's also gone through a loss, and she was really resonating with what you're talking about. So, and giving good advice, saying it's also important to stay busy, things like that. And it's
I'm sorry, also important to
stay busy.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
It's really, what we're talking about today is, when people think of loneliness, they think of it being something very simple, a solvable problem. Let me just put that person in front of other people, get them connected with something, and they're good to go. And what we're talking about today is that loneliness is more complex than that. Loneliness is often tied to grief. It is tied to a loss in some way. And that needs an emotional connection, and it needs a little space, and it needs, like Michael is saying, a lot more, he said, hey, this is a time for hugs. This is a time for where you actually need to feel an emotional connection with someone. So we need to think of loneliness as more in depth than just something that we can put a program in front of somebody and say, hey, go play pickleball, you'll be good. We need to think about it in terms of the complexities of each person. And we can learn about that by talking to people and asking them how they're feeling and just listening. And then we can learn about what it is that they really need.
I think that's well said.
I think that we're going to see more people in older adult years who are experiencing the loneliness that you're talking about. Grief-related loneliness, loss-related loneliness that comes about from, becoming a widow or a widower. And you said that that's more than 5 million individuals who experience that. And that is
today, and it's going to be a lot more over time.
Right. And it's only growing. And that's something that we need to really think about. That's a crisis that needs to be addressed. And that isn't just giving people programming. That's something that we need to say, hey, we have to think a little bit more deeply about this.
We also have to think about the gender differences.
Talk to me about that, the gender differences with this.
Well, the numbers that I gave in the beginning, that 30% of men 80 or older are widowed, but it's closer to 70% for women.
Yeah.
So we know that women are much more likely to be widowed than are men, in part because women live longer than men. And in our society, women tend to marry older men. So it's a double whammy, as it were.
Yeah.
So it's, if we're talking 70% of women, it's really likely that women are going to be widowed. And then the received opinion on this is that women deal with it better than men do.
Do you really think that's the case? That women deal with grieving and loneliness better than men?
I suspect that it is. And this is speculative. I don't know of a definitive study on this that I trust. But I think that women are more likely to have close friends with whom they exchange emotional information about themselves. Did I say that in a cumbersome enough way?
No, you said that in a way that's understandable. I think that women have more friends that they converse with regularly.
I think men often have friends, but they're not about to talk about certain
Right.
things.
Hmm.
They're not likely, it's not 100% true at all. I've been fortunate that I have some male friends who I've been able to talk with about what I'm experiencing. Uh, but, you know, a, a conversation that a man would have would be more likely be, did the Baltimore Orioles win this weekend or did they
Yeah.
lose?
Yeah.
And not about how did you feel
Right.
when something happened. So I think that it's probably the case that women, who in general I think are stronger than men. Now, this is not supported by research necessarily.
This is supported by you.
It's supported by me. Women are generally stronger than men. What is supported by research is men tend to be more dependent than women do, and men tend to be dependent on women. So that the loss of a spouse for a man is like, oh my God,
Yeah.
what do I do now? And women, I think, are often better prepared for it. But my only point is that there are these gender differences, and that in figuring out how to help people better with this, we need to think about it not just as for people in general, but what would be helpful to men, what would be helpful to women.
I agree with you with that. I do also think that that is going to be changing because men are becoming more conversant and having more meaningful conversations with the younger men, meaning younger generations are starting to have more of those conversations in a different way. Um,
Well,
yeah,
also as women have become more incorporated into the workplace,
yeah,
uh, they will probably become more like men.
maybe.
But
But
we'll see.
But it's interesting to bring up the gender difference as well. I think that when we lump something together as here's loneliness, here's what it looks like, and it's this very neat package, we really have to open it up and say, this is not such a neat package. There's a lot here. The experiences that people are talking about, they may feel reluctant to talk about them because they don't match what people are saying. This is what loneliness is, and that can feel bad for people, but loneliness is complex. It can look different depending on why you're feeling lonely, and the way in which we as friends and family and supporters can be useful is to let people talk and to reach out to people, so that if you haven't heard from somebody in a little while, reach out to them and ask them how they're doing and listen rather than try to solve the problem right away. Um, Michael, we're coming up to the top of the hour, and every week when we get on, I really learn a lot from you, and you made me think about loneliness in a whole new way today.
Well, I'm glad if I can be helpful, and it's always good talking with you, and your perspective is always useful to me. Now I have to turn this into an essay.
I hope you do. So the way that you can read about what both Michael and I write about, um, we have different columns that we write for Substack. Is if you go to Michael's, it's One Very Old Man is his Substack, and mine is The Right Side of 40. So you can read about midlife, which is what I write about, or you can read about old age, which is what Michael writes about. And so I hope you'll check both of those out. But you can find us every week here. It's usually on Tuesday. Sometimes we need to move it to Wednesday at around 3 o'clock. We go live and we talk about a topic that we both, decide we want to talk about. What's our topic for next week again?
I have no idea. Oh, wait a second. Are we going to talk about continuing care communities?
Yes, we were going to talk next week about continuing care communities. So you may think you're too young for that, but you are not. It is something to start thinking about right now.
Well, you're not talking to me when you say that you're too young for it.
There are people on here that
I'm too old for it.
feel the thrill. And
Yeah.
thank you to everybody who joined on and who has been liking the live streams that we're on. Your support means a lot to us, and we do want to keep bringing you things that you would like. So if there's something that you want us to talk about, put it in the chat. Let us know. We're always open to talking about different topics. But thanks again, Michael, for coming on today.
Thank you, Deborah. Good to see you.
You too. Take care.
See you next week.
See ya.